excited for him and Islam to fight again.
Okay, let's go. It doesn't matter where. Let's go.
If King Kong can make 155, okay, bring this guy here. Doesn't matter.
This guy really tough. If you want to stop him, you have to choke him or knock him out. This guy is gonna fight 5 rounds.
He had surgery after his last fight. Just how compromised is Volkanovski going to be, either from injury, cardiovascular conditioning? I'm worried Islam could win this in a relatively not easy fashion, but compared to the first one, much easier.
Volkanovski and Islam, if they go out and they fight again, and everything stays the same, but one guy fights just that much better, just a little tiny bit better. 3 more punches around, that'll do it. 1 more takedown attempt in every 5-minute sequence, that'll do it. Just a little bit better. If one guy does that and the other guy's the same, that will be enough to sway the fight into that person's favor. That's how close their first fight was. So, if we're to use history to be our trajectory, we're going to have to look at Volkanovski in rematches and see if he did better or worse than he did the first time. And that is where we would have to bring in Max Holloway. The appreciation and the understanding of Volkanovski being the best. That is something that we got. And the Ortega fight helped to solidify that. But when Volk became flat scary, right, like as good as he was perceived, and we never know, we never actually know who's who, it's just perception. But we did believe, we understood that Volk was the best at 145, keep him there. Don't even have a talk about moving him to 55 and moving him to, keep him right here. He's found a way, he can beat all these guys, he's studied these guys, he's watched these guys, he's the perfect size for these guys. That's what we believed. When we saw Volk extend the gap between himself and Max Holloway in the 3rd fight, which history says he can't do. History says the rematch favors the younger fighter. I thought Max beat him in the 1st fight. I strongly thought Max beat him in the 2nd fight. There was nothing remotely competitive about the 3rd fight, and it favored Volkanovski, and that is just not the way history plays itself. This was a one-off. It was a unicorn. But that was still the night where we went from appreciating and acknowledging the greatness that was Volkanovski to standing back and having an open fear. That was the night he became scary. It was also the night where we said, we can't just contain him to 45. We don't actually know what this guy's ceiling is. It was incredible, and I don't know how he did it. Taking that fight with Max on short notice, which Volk did, which is very similar to what Volk's getting ready to do, and eliciting the single greatest performance of his career. Widening a gap over the best featherweight to have ever done it. I don't know that you could say that about Max anymore. You for sure had to say that about Max. I don't know if you can say that now. It appears that now you have to say that about Volkanovski. But it's a really big deal. It's a really big deal because somewhere he learned something about Max. He never should have taken that fight. It was wildly risky. He did not owe it to Max. He did not owe it to the promotion. He did not owe it to the fans. He didn't even owe it to himself. He beat a guy and then he beat him again. We're done. We are done here forever. Say whatever you want about me. It won't work. Throw as much dirt that I'm hiding and ducking you and run. It won't work. I gave you 2 shots. It won't work. He gave him a 3rd shot and he gave it him on short notice and he ran away. He won every single round and it was brutal. It was brutal. That fight could have been stopped.
Fight fans, welcome back to Luxury Tainment. In this video, we're diving into the highly anticipated main event of UFC 294, scheduled for October the 21st at the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi.
I will change everything, inshallah, in this fight. Because last fight, many people was talking about the fight, but this time, inshallah, I make everybody shut up.
We'll go inside the cage and look at who could potentially win in a last-minute rematch with Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. Up until last week, the Australian was expecting to be away from the octagon for the remainder of the year before returning to defend his 145-pound gold against Tuperia in January 2024. But in the space of one phone call, Volkanovski agreed to step into the UFC 294 main event this weekend in the United Arab Emirates on short notice. The opportunity arose after original challenger Charles Oliveira saw a cut in training rob him of the opportunity for redemption against Islam Makhachev. While the opponent change will see the Russian lightweight champ preparing for a different style, the goal of his new rival will be the same, avenging a past defeat. After defeating Dubronx, Charles Oliveira to win the then vacant title last October, Makhachev successfully defended it for the first time in a champ versus champ showdown with Volkanovski this past February in Perth, Australia. While the unanimous decision victory has left many predicting a repeat result come fight nights inside the Etihad Arena on October the 21st, Volkanovski does have the backing of a notable compadre. Robert Whittaker gave his take with luxurytainment on fellow Aussie star Volkanovski's upcoming second attempt at achieving two-division glory this weekend at UFC 294. While many have pointed to the short-notice nature of the rematch as a hindrance for the featherweight champ, Whittaker suggested it may put him in a better headspace than prior to the February defeat. And with that in mind, the Reaper is envisioning an aggressive Volkanovski stopping Makhachev. Robert Whittaker told Luxurytainment, an aggressive 12-day Volkanovski, moving up. Maybe he was doing a lot of weights already trying to prepare for this fight. Having lost the first one, but seeing that he can hurt Makhachev, maybe we see a Volk that gets in there looking for that finish. I can see Volk hurting Makhachev and controlling the fight just by damage. Let's be honest, Makhachev didn't take Volkanovski to deep waters. Volk was never in deep waters, and that's kind of where Makhachev needs the fight to go. I can honestly see Volk finishing Makhachev. Volkanovski will be looking to prove Whittaker right when he makes the walk on what is essentially enemy turf this weekend. Having pointed out that he started too slowly at UFC 284 down under, it stands to reason that Alexander the Great will fulfill the aggressive elements of his fellow countrymen's assessment. UFC 294 was set to be one of the biggest fight cards of the year, and it is arguably even bigger after undergoing two major late changes. In the main event, Islam Makhachev defends the lightweight title against featherweight champion Alexander Volkanovski, whom he narrowly outpointed in February, with the latter stepping in for the injured Charles Oliveira. Makhachev submitted Oliveira 12 months ago to win the vacant lightweight belts, and their highly anticipated rematch was scheduled to take place this weekend in the same venue, the Etihad Arena in Abu Dhabi, until a severe cut ruled out the Brazilian. In steps Volkanovski, however, for another tantalizing rematch. Considering where their first fight was arguably won and lost, winning the wrestling will once again be a crucial crossroads for both parties this weekend. Makhachev, who scores a large part of his takedowns by training attacks in clinch space, was able to hit some well-timed shots against Volkanovski back at UFC 284. And whenever Makhachev could get Volkanovski against the cage and break up one of his points of contact along the fence, the lightweight champion was able to secure some crucial riding positions. However, Volkanovski, as he tends to, was able to find tactical adjustments to Makhachev's takedown as the rounds wore on. Whenever attacked from a rear waist clinch variation, Volkanovski attempted to disrupt the takedown action by either grapevining or butterflying Makhachev's near side leg for scrambling leverage. This allowed Volkanovski to float through some precarious positions, which in turn gave the featherweight champion a fighting chance against the bigger wrestler. Nevertheless, Volkanovski still officially clocked in at 0-4 in takedown attempts, scoring his lone stretch of top time from a knockdown that came late in round 5. I'm not sure how eager Volkanovski is to grapple given the short notice nature of this rematch, so expect the challenger to avoid Makhachev's grasps at all costs. Considering that Volkanovski is taking this fight on 12 days' notice, I'm honestly surprised that the betting lines are technically shorter this time around. I know that their first fight was more competitive than many expected, but Makhachev still fairly clearly won that decision. Perhaps the promotional hype of this matchup has poisoned the abilities of the Gen Pop to the pundits alike, but I just can't ignore the elephant in the room, which is the short notice nature of this fight. Aside from the fact that fight shape is different from being in shape, Volkanovski is coming off a surgical operation on his left arm and looks to have been nursing some stitches above his left eye in recent weeks. With that in mind, I'm not exactly certain how much Volkanovski has been able to train, adding all the extra travel and media that the Australian native has had to jump into, and it becomes even harder for me to back Volkanovski in this spot.
Volkanovski, if we look at his history of fighting somebody and then fighting them again, he fights them better the more rounds and the more time he has with them. With the example of Max Holloway that I just gave you, now let's go look at Islam. Can you say the same? And wouldn't it be fair to say that Islam can't do that? I don't know of a rematch he's ever had. We were about to see one with Oliveira. But preparing for a guy who you fought for 7.5 minutes, which is what Islam did. Every day you've got in your mind, in your motivation, in your hard work, in your effort, you know I'm fighting a guy who I fought for 7.5 minutes. It was a very non-competitive 7.5 minutes. That is a very different feeling when you wake up and go to bed each night in training camp, as opposed to knowing I'm going to be facing the guy that was the hardest physical task of my life. And one of them will be affected from that first fight. One of them, see, it's not about who's going to fight better in a rematch. It's not. One of them will not fight as well in a rematch. When you have the hardest experience of your life, if you are a really deep thinker, you can begin to strategize and figure out how to get the same result while not going to those deep waters that are horrifying. And you don't even know about them until you get there. It doesn't matter how tough you are. It's fight or flight, and your body and your mind naturally will not want to return to something like that. So when you have a rematch, it's not that one guy fights better, even when the result is completely different. One of the two guys wilts. And if he wilts just a little bit, it will make the opponent look better. So Volkanovski, who's coming in with a world title, and regardless of outcome, will wake up the following day as world champion, versus Islam, who will show up with a world title, and if it doesn't go his way, will no longer be world champion. Which one of them do you think has the motivation? Which one of them?
I'm a big fan of both Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev, and a part of me will be definitely hoping for the featherweight king to pull off an incredible upset. That said, as an analyst who is being real about the situation at hand, I have to pick Makhachev to survive the early scares in order to pull away and force a stoppage. So guys, who do you have winning in this fight? Please like, subscribe and comment, and have a great day.
Volkanovski, the first fight was incredible. Everybody wanted to see the rematch. Everybody was asking when it could possibly happen again.
Should we do it again? Do it good. Maybe Abu Dhabi.
Yes. When you're one of the best in the world, you have to fight. Doesn't matter who is gonna be there.
Let's go out and finish this guy. No pressure on me, baby. No pressure at all. All the pressure's on him. I'm coming off the couch. You better do something about it.
Everybody that is involved in the main and co-main event are absolute studs. The mentality that these guys have, this is the type of stuff that makes you great.
Let's look what happens if things go right.